The D-Day Museum will be closed for a year as it starts a £4 million makeover. As part of its closure, the staff have had to clear out around 500 artefacts, some of which have been in the museum since it opened in 1984. Their largest item is the Overlord Embroidery, which measures 83 metres. And our reporter Kirstie Chambers went to see how they're packing it away.
Known as one of the longest textile pieces in the world, the Overlord Embroidery is 83 metres long and has been on show in the museum since 1984.
The embroidery was commissioned by Lord Delverton to commemorate the D-Day landings, and also the planning that went into the Operation Overlord. So it starts right at the beginning in the early days, looking at the home front and what was happening to people, so being bombed out and women joining the forces, that kind of thing. And then it goes through telling the story of how they planned it, the Allies, and how they got together in order to make it possible. And then the last part of the embroidery, in fact the last half roughly, tells the actual landings, showing all the landing craft going across the channel and the soldiers coming ashore in Normandy. But also, at the end, it also goes on to show you a little bit about the Battle of Normandy, which is what followed the D-Day landings and the battle for France and moving forward to go to Paris.
The embroidery is split into 35 pieces, where it has been in a glass display for over 30 years. The textile-based artefact is extremely fragile, which means extra care has to be taken whilst packing it away.
So we have to pack it very carefully because it's quite fragile. Obviously, being textile, you could put a hole through it quite easily, so we have to be really careful. So we are packing each embroidery into its own crate, which they're the original crates that came with the embroidery, and we've refurbished them, and they'll be packed carefully into the crates by the conservators, in fact, and then taken away by a specialist fine art mover.
In order to preserve the embroidery, they've had to extensively plan the extraction of the pieces.
Once the embroideries are taken down from their display cabinet, they're brought onto a piece of Tyvek, which is a piece of material that allows water through or moisture through one side but not through the other. So they're wrapped in Tyvek. That is then attached with Tyvek tape and with ribbons just for extra security, and then the piece is put into the packing case, which has been lined with this plastazote material.
Staff at the museum have been planning the move for 1 year, but they've had to consider how to pack away around 500 artefacts.
It's taken us quite a long time to plan this move. I think we've been planning for about a year, just about. Obviously, the logistics are quite complicated, and making sure we've thought about everything we might need to do for the embroidery, but also for all the other objects in the museum. We've got to have enough boxes, enough material to pack them all away, and obviously move them about, and enough storage space for them to go into. So it's taken us quite a while to make sure we've got all that in place.
After receiving £4 million from the Heritage Lottery Fund, it will be transformed into an international museum that tells the story of D-Day in the 21st century. They plan to create a more personal aspect to the storytelling whilst using more interactive technologies.
We're going to be telling the story from a personal perspective of people who took part. So there'll be lots of lovely personal things to look at and also stories to hear. There'll also be more things like interactives, and we'll be moving our vehicles around as well, so they'll be more integrated into the story rather than all together at the end of the story as they are at the moment.
The D-Day Museum Trust are still looking for £170,000 of additional funding in order to make further improvements to their galleries. Kirstie Chambers for That's Solent.